getting ready to move, so I'm getting all my cars like ready to go, and I freaking hadn't drove the Civic lately because it needs like a timing chain, tensioner, valve adjustment, VTC gear. It's not detrimental, it's just I heard it start rattling on startup, so I decided to be careful and stop driving it, which is why I've been driving my Buick and my GTP. But this thing, the battery was dead, and I had to jump start it twice, and it kept dying while it was running because the battery was super flat. So I just decided to take it out, get some RPMs in it, get some steady driving time in it, let the alternator kind of shock charge it back to life because it's a brand new battery as of last year. But man, one of the things that I forgot is how absolutely fun it is to drive this freaking car. Like, all my other cars are boosted, every single one of them except for my work van. But my GTP supercharged, my Regal's turbocharged, my KLZE Probe is turbocharged, my Red Probe's turbocharged. Like, my bus is turbocharged that I live in. Literally, it's an LMM Duramax turbo diesel. This is the only naturally aspirated car that I own, and I always forget how phenomenal it is to drive this car, how nimble it is, how quick it revs, how high it revs, the crispy sound that the K20 has. Like, it's just so enjoyable. And I'm starting to fall in love with this car all over again, just like when I first bought it. Like, it's just so much fun. I don't understand how Honda could get this car so perfect like it did, and just, to me, make it so ugly. Like the FA5 four doors, the Mugen four doors, those are nice cars. But the FG2, it's just the coupe, I never really was a fan of how these looked. I mainly bought this car because it was $3,000 for the whole car, and I figured that gets me a K-Series with a 6-speed manual with LSD and like a harness and everything if I want to K-swap something eventually, at worst. At best, I get a nice running driving car, and it's been phenomenal. I've put like over 10,000 miles on this car and had absolutely no issues with it. It's been great, and it runs awesome. It always, the only problem I had was a second gear scratch and a third gear lockout, and I put a hybrid racing master cylinder, slave cylinder and stainless braided clutch line in it, adjusted the clutch, immediately took away the problem. I had no more issues after that. Like, it was wild to me how good this car was with just that one fix. And I don't know, man. I think Hondas get a bad rap for sure, but I think that this car is probably one of my favorite cars I've ever owned. It's got the most comfortable seats I've ever felt. The electric power steering is badass. The K20 is badass. The freaking 6-speed is badass. Like, everything about this car is just a performance driver-oriented car. Like, it's just fun. You don't even have to get into VTEC. I probably didn't even go over 5,000 RPM right there, and it just feels so good. Like, and when you do crack into some VTEC, it sounds and feels so good. Everything about it. It's got a cold air intake and a muffler delete, and it just sounds great. It feels great. It's just like a linear pull, doesn't fall off. VTEC cracks, you feel a little kick. Like I have high horsepower turbo cars. Anybody who watches my TikTok, my YouTube, like, you know, this is probably my slowest vehicle. It's probably tied with my GTP for my slowest vehicle. But as far as full-on driving experience goes, I've owned over 70 cars. Most of them manual, turbocharged, a lot of them front-wheel drive, some rear-wheel drive, some all-wheel drive. And the one universal thing I can say is this is the newest car I've ever owned. It's the first 6-speed car I've ever owned. It's the first modern technology car I've ever owned. And probably one of the slowest cars I've ever owned. And it is the most fun to drive, pretty much hands down. Like you just can't go wrong with it. Everything feels so good. It just goes, man. And it's not fast, but it's just like a steady, fun pull. It just tells you, I got something under the hood. I might not be the fastest thing ever, but the enjoyment of driving is there, and it handles good. Just a great car. Like, I don't understand how Honda has done so well for so long just making a driver's car. Just like Mazda with the Miata, Mazda with the RX-7. Both of those cars, if you've ever driven one that was really well put together, it is an unusually thrilling experience for something that's got between 110 and 200 horsepower, depending on which generation of each car you're driving. Now, I haven't driven an FD RX-7. I've driven up to an FC Turbo 2, which I owned, an 88 anniversary white-on-white car, and it was a phenomenal car. Probably the only car I've ever had that handled better than this one. Like, actually in corners, like out of the box. But it was a whole different experience because it was rear-wheel drive, had no torque like this, but it was a rotary and a turbo. So it was always just a driving experience. And that's exactly what this car is. It is a driving experience. Everything about it, it's not geared towards good gas mileage. It's not geared toward raw straight line performance. It's not geared toward fucking just outright monstrous braking. It is a balanced car that does everything right, that checks every box that you could ask it to check. It's fun. It's not exactly nimble, but it's fun. I mean, it's still almost 3,000 pounds, yeah. But to just have, 8,000 RPM on tap, even this car's got almost 219,000 miles and was not maintained very well. And yet, with just a couple little things, I was able to make it a really, really good driving car. Like, it drives absolutely perfectly. Best $3,000 I've ever spent in my life, hands down, unequivocally, my 2000 Civic Si.